I am Thomas Avery, 33 years old, the owner of a small diner called Avery's Diner in Madison, Wisconsin. My life revolves around endlessly long days, from opening the doors early in the morning to welcome customers until late at night when I finally finish cleaning up. That day was no different. The sky had already grown pitch black and a biting cold wind blew in from Lake Mendota, carrying the sharp chill of late autumn. The customers had all left, leaving only the clattering sounds I made while wiping down the old wooden tables. The scent of cold coffee mingling with the lingering aroma of grilled meat in the air. I was tired, but it was a familiar tiredness, like an integral part of this monotonous life. I thought to myself that all I needed to do was lock the door, go home, take a shower, and sleep deeply until morning. That would be fine. I stepped outside, the keys jingling in my hand, ready to end yet another day. The air outside was colder than I had expected. My breath turned into white mist in the darkness. I glanced around to make sure no one was there, and then suddenly my heart tightened. Right next to the diner's wall, huddled in the dark corner, was a small figure. A boy about 10 years old was standing there, faint like a shadow under the streetlight. His clothes were ragged, the thin fabric offering no protection against the skin-cutting cold, and his worn-out sneakers were so tattered that his toes were exposed. His face was gaunt, his skin pale under the yellowish glow of the empty street. But it was his eyes that made me freeze. They were weary, as if worn down by hunger and thirst, yet tense with wariness, like those of a wild animal accustomed to fleeing for survival. He didn't look at me. He just kept his head down, staring at the ground, his arms wrapped tightly around himself, trying to hold in what little warmth he had amid the endless shivering. In that moment, my heart sank. I had seen plenty of homeless people in Madison, but standing before me was a child, small and alone in the dead of night. I knew I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen anything. I couldn't simply lock the door and walk away. A feeling of pity crept into every step, making me stop even though I had already turned to leave. I can't abandon the kid, I thought to myself, my heart pounding. The cold outside seemed to seep into my bones, and I imagined how long the boy had been enduring it. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm, and gently called out, "Hey kid, it's really cold out here. Come inside the diner for a bit, I'll let you warm up." The boy startled, jerking his head up to look at me, his eyes wide with fear. He took a step back, as if I were a threat. I could clearly see his hesitation. Those few seconds stretched on forever as he stood frozen, weighing his options, perhaps wondering if I was a bad person. My heart beat faster. I was afraid he would run away and disappear into the darkness. I raised my hand in a reassuring gesture, not stepping closer, and gave a gentle smile. "It's okay. I won't do anything to you. Come on in. I've already locked up, but you can stay for a while." The boy looked at me for a few more seconds, then cautiously followed, always keeping his distance like a stray cat afraid of being caught. I opened the diner door, let him go in first, and closed it behind us. The warm air inside seemed to relax him a little, but he still stood close to the wall, not daring to sit. I looked at him, and the pity in my heart grew even stronger. The kid was skin and bones, his hair messy and tangled, his face dirty. He must be starving, I thought, and decided to act. Without saying much, I went into the kitchen, turned on the heater, and started preparing a meal. I used what was left from the day: a steaming bowl of chicken soup, a few slices of toasted bread, a portion of beef stir-fried with vegetables, and a glass of warm milk. The smell of food filled the air, and I saw the boy swallow hard, but he still didn't move. I placed the tray of food on the table closest to him, pulled out a chair, and sat down a little distance away. "Eat up, kid. I'm not charging you. I run a diner. There's plenty of leftover food." The boy looked at me, then at the soup, hesitating for another moment. Then, as if he could no longer resist the hunger, he rushed to the table, sat down, and began to eat. Oh God, the way he ate made my heart twist in pain. He ate frantically, almost swallowing whole bites without chewing properly, as if afraid someone would snatch it away. The soup was scalding hot, but he didn't complain. He just slurped it down desperately. The bread was torn apart and stuffed into his mouth. The beef disappeared in an instant. I sat watching, unable to hold back the sorrow, my eyes stinging. How long has this kid been starved? How could a child have to go through this? I thought silently, trying to suppress my emotions. I remembered my own childhood. Not wealthy, but at least I had parents and warm meals. And this boy? When he finished eating and wiped his mouth with his torn sleeve, I finally dared to speak. My voice was slow and patient, like talking to a wild animal. "Are you full? Do you want anything else?" He shook his head, his eyes still fixed on the table. I continued, "What's your name? Why are you out on the street alone like this?" At first he hesitated, still guarded, his body tense as if ready to bolt. I didn't push him, I just sat quietly, waiting. My gaze was gentle, without judgment. I knew that for someone like him, trust was the rarest luxury. Gradually, under that patience, he opened up. His voice was small and trembling. "My name is Caleb Frost. I'm 10 years old. I've been wandering for weeks now. I eat whatever anyone gives me. Tonight I was so hungry. I stood in front of the diner hoping someone would give me something to fill my stomach." My heart tightened. Wandering for weeks? A 10-year-old child? I tried to keep my voice steady. "Why are you wandering? Where are your parents?" Caleb looked at me, his eyes filled with sadness, as if digging into painful memories. He told his story, his voice breaking, but every word cut into my heart like a knife. His parents had once had a broken marriage. His father, Owen Frost, was a severe alcoholic. He drank all day, and when drunk, he beat Caleb's mother mercilessly. The beatings, the screams, the sleepless nights filled with fear, Caleb recounted it all with reddened eyes. Then one day his mother couldn't take it anymore. She left, abandoning him alone with his drunken father. With no wife left to vent his anger on, Owen turned it toward Caleb. Whenever he was drunk, he would curse and beat Caleb with anything within reach. A belt, a broken bottle, even his fists. I listened in silence, anger rising alongside the wrenching pity. Why did a child have to endure such things? In my mind, I pictured the small boy curled up in a corner of the house, living in constant fear whenever his father flew into a rage, the wounds quietly deepening over time. Caleb continued, his voice shaking even more. "The last time he was so drunk he hit me with a wooden chair. It hurt so much, blood was pouring from my head. I couldn't take it anymore, so I ran away from home. I became homeless, sleeping in parks, begging on the streets. I didn't dare ask anyone for help. I was afraid they'd send me to an orphanage or into foster care. I was afraid no one would believe a kid like me. They'd think I was lying and send me back to him." Hearing the entire story, I was stunned into silence. Pity surged like waves, so heavy that I couldn't find words. Before me was not just a homeless child, but a young soul who had already learned to live in fear. I suddenly understood that what made him tremble the most wasn't the hungry, freezing nights on the street, but the feeling that there was no place truly safe to return to, no one to trust that he would be protected. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't turn my back, because if I walked away, I would be leaving behind not just a child, but an unsoothed fear that had never been healed. It was already very late at night. The wind outside was still whistling through the cracks in the diner's door, carrying the bone-chilling cold of a Wisconsin night. I glanced at the clock, nearly midnight, and thought about this boy, Caleb. If I let him continue wandering, tomorrow morning I might read in the newspaper about a child found frozen to death. No, I couldn't let that happen. My heart beat faster. A strange sense of excitement rising within me, as if my life was about to take a completely different turn. "Come home with me, kid," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "Stay the night and we'll figure things out in the morning. I live in a small apartment nearby." Caleb hesitated, his eyes darting toward the pitch-black window, then back to me, as if weighing fear against exhaustion. A few minutes passed before he nodded, quietly stood up, and followed me. We walked through the empty streets, our breath turning into white mist, and I could clearly feel the tension radiating from him. He kept his distance, ready to run if anything seemed wrong. My apartment was only a few blocks from the diner, a modest place with a living room that doubled as a kitchen, one small bedroom, and old furniture. I opened the door, turned on the warm lights, and told him, "Come in. You can sleep on the sofa. I'll get you a blanket." That night, I lay awake in bed, listening to the steady breathing coming from the other room. I got up and quietly peeked through the crack in the door. Caleb was sleeping soundly on the makeshift bed I had hurriedly set up from the sofa and a few old cushions. His face was relaxed, no longer carrying the wary expression from earlier, as if this were the first truly peaceful sleep he'd had after so many days filled with fear. I realized I had never seen a child sleep so deeply. No startling awake, no curling up defensively, just steady, deep breaths as though he was finally allowed to let go. A strange warmth spread through my chest, but it was quickly followed by a simmering worry. I wondered what I was doing, a single man bringing a strange child home. What would others think if they found out? Those thoughts made my heart race, and all sorts of troubling scenarios flashed through my mind. But then I looked again at the boy sleeping peacefully before me and knew that no matter what happened, I would never regret not turning my back on him tonight. The next morning, faint sunlight filtered through the window. I woke early and prepared a simple breakfast. Fried eggs, toasted bread, coffee for me, and milk for him. The smell of food filled the air and woke Caleb. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and looked more alert. We ate in silence, only the clinking of cutlery breaking the quiet. When we finished, he stood up and wiped his mouth. "I've bothered you enough. I should go now. Thank you for the meal." He quietly walked to the door, his small figure gradually disappearing down the hallway. I stood watching him leave, a nameless feeling of emptiness rising inside me, as if I had just lost something I hadn't yet fully grasped. The apartment returned to its familiar silence, but now that silence felt heavier than ever. I went back to the diner and worked as usual, but my mind kept drifting to him. Where will he go? What will he eat? Where will he sleep? Those questions made me restless, anxiously waiting for something, perhaps for him to return or for bad news from somewhere. 3 days passed slowly, dragging on endlessly. The diner carried on as always, customers coming and going, but I kept glancing at the door. On the evening of the 3rd day, as the diner was about to close and I was wiping down the last table, the door creaked open. I looked up, my heart skipping a beat. It was Caleb. He stood there, thinner, his clothes dirtier, his eyes still cautious but no longer as lost as before. He looked at me and said softly, "Uncle, I'm back. I have nowhere else to go. I've never met anyone as kind as you." His words filled me with unmistakable relief and joy, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. I smiled and opened the door wider. "Come in, kid. I've been waiting for you." My heart raced with excitement at this unexpected turn. Caleb stepped inside, sat at the familiar table, and I quickly prepared a hot meal. He told me that over the past 3 days he had wandered in parks and begged on street corners, but the cold and fear had become unbearable. "I kept thinking about you, about the warm food, about sleeping safely," he said, his eyes turning red. I listened, my heart aching with pity. Then he suddenly asked, "Can I stay and help out at the diner? I just need enough to eat and a place to sleep at night. I'll work hard." His offer caught me off guard, my heart pounding. A 10-year-old working. But if not, where would he go? I nodded. "All right, kid. But you have to promise to listen to me." Caleb smiled, the first smile I had seen from him, and from that moment our lives began to change. In the days that followed, we were busy together at the diner. Caleb was obedient and quick. He wiped tables, washed dishes, and even learned how to pour coffee for customers. Regular patrons noticed and praised him. "That kid's really sharp, Thomas." He gradually won everyone over, and the diner seemed warmer somehow. In the evenings when we returned home, the small apartment was no longer lonely. We ate dinner together, sometimes leftovers from the diner, sometimes something extra I cooked, and laughter filled the air. Caleb talked about his old school and the games he used to play with friends before everything fell apart. I told him about my own childhood and the old days in Madison. Those rare moments of peace made me realize that my once monotonous life now had deeper meaning. But mixed in was anxiety. I feared Owen might show up, or that someone would report the strange child working at the diner to the police. Several months passed quickly, and the bond between us grew into something truly like father and son. Caleb called me Uncle Thomas, but in his eyes I saw the trust one gives a real father. His presence had become indispensable. Waking up to his smile in the morning, coming home to his stories at night, all of it filled me with a strange happiness. And that was what led me to the decision. I would adopt him. The thought came suddenly on a stormy night as Caleb slept soundly on the sofa. My heart pounded with excitement at this monumental idea. Am I qualified? What's the process? And what about Owen? Those questions kept me awake. When I told him my intention over breakfast, Caleb was both overjoyed and terrified. His eyes lit up. Really, Uncle? I can stay with you forever? But then his face paled at the mention of having to see Owen Frost. No, I'm so scared. He'll hit me. He trembled as old memories flooded back. I reassured him, holding his hand. I'll always be right there with you. You won't face it alone. We have to do this to make it legal. My words calmed him, but my own heart was racing, nervous about the confrontation ahead. We went to Owen's house on a gloomy afternoon, the sky low and oppressively gray. The rundown house sat at the end of a narrow alley, one large window pane broken, the stench of alcohol wafting out even from the street, a sign of a life long surrendered. Inside was chaos. Overdue bills scattered on the floor, empty bottles rolling everywhere. Furniture tossed about in complete disarray. Owen sat precariously on an old chair, leaning back carelessly, his eyes bleary from liquor. When he saw me, he narrowed them, staring for a moment as if trying to focus, then rasped, "Who the hell are you? What do you want at my place?" I took a deep breath and kept my voice steady. I'm the one who's been taking care of Caleb lately. I'm here today to talk clearly with you. Owen smirked, his gaze sliding over me indifferently. Talk fast. I don't have time. I got straight to the point. I want to adopt Caleb. For that to happen, you need to sign away your parental rights. Owen burst into laughter, a hoarse sound echoing through the alcohol-soaked house. Adopt him? People like you always want to play hero. See someone suffering and think you can save their life, but in the end you're just saddling yourself with extra baggage. He waved his hand dismissively. I can barely take care of myself. Let the kid go wherever. I clenched my fists, struggling to stay calm. If you sign, you'll have no further responsibility. Caleb will have a stable life, and you won't be involved anymore. Owen fell silent for a few seconds. A familiar calculating glint flashed in his bleary eyes. He leaned back, sizing me up from head to toe, then said slowly, Sounds fine, but nothing in life is free. If you want my signature, leave $200. I froze for a beat, not because of the amount, but because of how casually he said it, as if selling an inanimate object. That's it? $200 for a signature, as if everything that ever existed between you and the boy meant nothing? I asked. Owen laughed hoarsely, his indifference plain. For me, that's plenty. $200 to be done with something I don't want to carry anymore, so I never have to see him, never have to take responsibility. You call it cheap. I call it a weight off my shoulders, and I said nothing more. I took out the money and placed it on the table. $200 sat neatly amid the mess of papers exchanged for a decision that could shape a child's entire life. Owen didn't look at me or glance back. He grabbed a pen and signed the paper quickly and decisively, as if merely acknowledging a small debt. When he finished, he pushed the document toward me and said indifferently, Done. Take him. And don't come back here again. I picked up the paper without another word. As I turned and left that house reeking of alcohol, I knew that for Owen it had been nothing more than a cheap transaction. But for me, it was the moment I officially chose to stand by a child, and there was no turning back. The adoption process moved quickly since there was no contest. I prepared the paperwork, met with a lawyer, and finally the court approved it. On the day we received the documents, Caleb couldn't hide his joy and threw his arms around me. You're my dad now. And I understood that from this moment on, I wasn't just giving shelter to a child. I had chosen to become his father with all the responsibility and willingness that entailed. Yet deep inside, I still felt nervous. What would this new life bring? Would Owen ever return? How would my own family react? Those questions made the future feel dramatic, full of surprises. In the early days, after we officially became father and son, our lives gradually settled into a stable rhythm. Avery's Diner still opened every morning, filled with the aroma of fresh coffee and toasted bread, and regular customers continued to stop by, asking about the bright, quick-witted boy. Caleb now called me Dad, though at first he was shy about it, and every time I heard it, a strange warmth filled my heart. We developed new routines, waking up together, eating a simple breakfast of eggs and toast. Then I would take him to the nearby school, a public school in Madison where he could start over fresh. In the evenings, we returned home, had dinner, and he would tell me about his day at school, about his new friends, about the math lessons that made him grimace. Life was stable, but I knew it was fragile. The pressures of daily expenses hung over us like a dark cloud. Costs kept piling up. Tuition, books, new clothes for him, utilities, groceries, all adding up and thinning my wallet. I understood clearly that a child like Caleb's future couldn't be confined to this small diner. He needed a proper education, knowledge to reach farther, not to grow up just wiping tables and washing dishes like me. I remembered the nights he talked about his dreams. He wanted to become a singer, or at least learn something so he wouldn't have to wander anymore. So even knowing it would be a heavy financial burden, I decided to send him to school. On his first day, as I took him there, my heart pounded with nervousness. Will the kid fit in? Will the other children tease him? I worried, standing outside the gate watching him walk into class with the new backpack I'd bought, his small figure amid the laughing crowd of kids. He turned back to wave, his smile radiant, and I breathed a sigh of relief, but the worry still lingered. From the day Caleb started school, my finances truly became tight. Expenses came thick and fast: enrollment fees, uniforms, textbooks, even school lunch money. The diner's profits were barely enough to cover basics. Madison isn't as expensive as New York, but for a small diner like mine, monthly revenue hovered around a few $1,000s. After deducting ingredients and rent, what remained was hardly anything. I had to start cutting back on everything non-essential. I stopped buying coffee outside, often ate leftovers from the diner, and even sold a few old items online to make ends meet. Yet Caleb proved remarkably understanding. Every day after school, he would run straight to the diner, drop his backpack, and immediately help me, wiping tables, serving customers, even learning to handle the cash register. Sometimes he would look at me and say, in a voice far more serious than a 10-year-old's should be, that I looked tired and he could take over. In the evenings, Caleb continued to clean the apartment, mopping floors, washing dishes, trying to share the burden in the best way a child could. Watching him bustle about like that broke my heart. He was still so young, he should have been playing carefree, not learning to worry so early. Despite the hardships, I never let Caleb feel like a burden. I always tried to give him a decent, fulfilling life within my means, buying ice cream on weekends, telling bedtime stories, even saving up to buy a ball for him to play with in the park. "You're my joy, son," I would say every night, hugging him before turning off the light. But reality was harsh. My meager savings, only a few $1,000s from years of hard work, were steadily draining. The diner barely kept us afloat. On slow days, I had to borrow a few hundred from friends to pay bills. My heart often raced with anxiety at the end of each month as I sat calculating the books under dim light. What now? If the diner goes under, what will happen to us? Those thoughts kept me awake, worrying about our fragile future. After much deliberation, I had to reduce the monthly money I sent to my parents. Before, I sent $300 each month to Leonard and Ruth in the Madison suburbs. They were retired, living on a modest pension, and I saw it as my way of honoring them. At first, I made excuses about slow business and sent only $100, then gradually stopped altogether. I called them, explaining vaguely that I'd been busy lately. The diner opened from dawn to dusk, but with sparse customers, and money wasn't as plentiful as before. After speaking, a familiar guilt washed over me. I wondered if they understood or if they would be angry. I waited nervously for their reaction, but the other end of the line was only prolonged silence. enough for me to reassure myself that things might still be okay. Until one rainy afternoon while I was home with Caleb, frantic, heavy knocking echoed at the door. I opened it, and my heart suddenly tightened. My parents stood there, Leonard Avery frowning deeply, Ruth Avery with eyes red from anger. They walked straight in without waiting for an invitation, bringing with them a heavy, tense atmosphere. In that moment, I knew I could no longer keep hiding the truth. As they entered, my father's eyes immediately fixed on the boy. He scowled, his harsh voice ringing through the small room. "Who's that kid? Where did he come from to be living in your house?" Before I could answer, he continued, his tone growing sharper. "What's he doing here? How did a strange child suddenly appear in your home?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "That's Caleb. He's living with me." My father glared, unable to hide his displeasure. "Living with you? How? Don't tell me you've taken in some outsider to raise while the diner is struggling and you have no extra money. Your parents are still alive and well. You don't take care of us, but you go raising some random kid. What the hell do you think you're doing?" My mother cut in, her voice full of reproach and hurt. "Do you even know what you're doing? You're spending money on a stranger while your own flesh and blood parents still need your support. We raised you, gave you an education, and now you treat us worse than this adopted child." My heart pounded wildly. Their every word cut into my chest, but I tried to remain calm. "Mom, Dad, I'm not turning my back on you. But Caleb is my son now. I've legally adopted him and I have a responsibility to care for him." My father slammed his hand on the table, voice full of fury. "The diner is in trouble, the money you send us keeps dwindling, and yet you're spending it on an outsider. We're old, we need your help. That's your responsibility." My mother burst into tears, her voice trembling. "How could you prioritize some strange child like this? He's not your blood, but we're the parents who gave you life." Caleb, terrified, huddled behind the bedroom door, his eyes wide with panic, his whole body shaking. Seeing that tore at my heart. The boy didn't deserve to hear these words. I stood up abruptly, blocking the doorway, my voice firmer than ever. "I'm not changing my decision. I have to put the child I've chosen to commit to first. Caleb needs me, and I need him too." I looked straight at my parents and continued slowly but decisively. "You still have your pension. It's not much, but it's enough to live on. I can't keep supporting you like before because I have to provide for Caleb, for his education, for his future." My words were like pouring oil on the fire. My father's face turned red with rage, pointing directly at me. "You ungrateful brat. We sacrificed our whole lives for you, and now you choose some strange kid and turn your back on your own parents." He growled coldly. "From today on, I no longer have a son like you." My mother cried harder, voice choking. "Son, how can you treat your parents this way? Don't you value your own flesh and blood at all?" They stood up and stormed out in anger. The door slammed shut, leaving the apartment in heavy silence. I stood frozen in that emptiness, a sense of loss crashing over me like I'd just lost a part of my life. My heart pounded, my mind reeling. My blood family, the people I thought would always stand by me, had turned their backs and left. I collapsed into a chair, feeling hollow, with only unanswered questions. Was I right? Will they ever forgive me? Or is this truly the end? Before I could regain my composure, Caleb timidly approached from behind the door. He looked at me, eyes red, then silently hugged me in his awkward way. "Don't be sad, Dad. I'm here with you." His simple words brought tears to my eyes. I hugged him tightly, realizing that even if I'd lost my blood family, I was not alone. Caleb was my new family, the reason to keep going. But that night, lying awake, I still felt anxious about the future. How would the diner survive? How would Caleb grow up amid these hardships? And Owen, the alcoholic who signed away his rights for a cheap $200, might he come back to cause trouble? Those questions made everything more dramatic, like a movie with an unknown ending. Our lives continued to flow in a familiar rhythm, without any major upheavals suddenly disrupting everything. The days revolved steadily around Avery's diner, Caleb's school, and the small, cramped home of father and son. That life was simple, but I knew it was as fragile as the thin ice on Lake Mendota in winter. Every day I nervously glanced at the door, fearing Owen might suddenly appear with his smirking grin demanding more money, or that a new bill would arrive and empty my wallet completely. But Caleb, that boy, was the only light. His smile when recounting school stories helped me forget some of the worries. On a rare, warm, sunny afternoon in Madison, while I was busy behind the counter, the phone rang loudly. I wiped my hands on my apron, picked it up, and the voice of his homeroom teacher came through. "Mr. Avery, this is Ms. Jenkins from Caleb's school. Can you come right away? It's about the boy." My heart sank immediately as if someone had squeezed it tight. A flood of negative thoughts flashed through my mind. Had Caleb gotten into trouble? Was he in a fight at school? Or was it his health? He'd been coughing a few days earlier because of the cold. I imagined him in the hospital, or worse, Owen showing up at the school causing a scene. Cold sweat broke out. My hands trembled as I replied, "I'll be there right away." "Is it something serious?" She only said, "It's not bad news, but you should come." Those words made me even more anxious, my heart pounding like a drum. Without hesitation, I closed the diner earlier than usual. I rushed to the car and sped through the familiar streets, my mind in turmoil. If something's happened to Caleb, what will I do? The diner is already struggling. Hospital bills would finish us. The wind whistled past the window, but I felt nothing except the surging worry. Arriving at the school, I ran into the office, breathing heavily. Miss Jenkins greeted me, and when I saw Caleb sitting there, safe and sound, no scratches or panic, I finally exhaled in relief. The boy grinned widely. "Dad's here. I'm fine." My heart calmed a little, but I was still nervous, waiting to hear what it was about. The teacher invited me to sit down, her voice warm. "Mr. Avery, today the school held an audition for students to select the performing arts team, and Caleb surprised everyone." I was stunned, not understanding. She continued, "His voice is a rare natural gift, clear, emotional, and so well controlled that the music teacher was astonished. We believe that with proper training, Caleb could seriously pursue a career in singing in the future." Her words filled me with both joy and confusion. Happiness surged. Did Caleb have talent? The boy who once wandered the streets could become a singer? But before the joy could fully settle, financial worry crashed in like a cold wave. I knew full well that the costs of vocal lessons, instruments, performances, all of it would be far from cheap. With the diner barely scraping by, how could I manage? My heart raced again, anxious at the prospect. I asked the teacher for time to think it over, then took Caleb home. On the way, he excitedly recounted, "Dad, I sang 'Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star,' and everyone clapped so loud." I smiled and ruffled his hair, but in my mind I kept weighing my capabilities against the limits. He deserves this chance, but where will the money come from? Sell the diner? Take on more debt? Those thoughts kept me awake for several nights. I lay sleepless, staring at the dark ceiling, nervously imagining the future. Caleb shining on stage, or him missing out because of poverty? After many restless days, I realized this might be the rare open door to a brighter future for Caleb, one where he wouldn't have to worry about hunger or wandering. I decided I wouldn't let that opportunity slip away, no matter the sacrifice. Even though the diner's income was tight, sometimes barely enough for basic groceries, I still enrolled Caleb in proper vocal lessons at a small music center in downtown Madison. The monthly fee was $150 plus books and equipment, making my wallet even thinner. On the first day I took him to class, my heart pounded. Will he like it, or will it be too much pressure? But Caleb was thrilled, hugging me tightly before going in. "I'll work hard so I won't let you down, Dad." To make ends meet, besides working at the diner from morning to night, I took on night shifts cleaning at an Italian restaurant a few blocks away. From 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., mopping floors, washing dishes, clearing tables, grueling work, but it added $200 a week. Every night when I got home, my legs ached, my back throbbed, but seeing Caleb sleeping peacefully, I gritted my teeth and endured. I began gradually selling valuable items around the house, The old watch my father had left me, the music speakers, even the bicycle I used for errands. Each time I posted something online, my heart raced. Will anyone buy it? How much will it get? The money covered the lesson fees, but small debts started piling up. Borrowing $300 from friends, $500 from the bank at high interest. Many nights I returned home exhausted, collapsing into a chair with stinging eyes from fatigue. Can I keep this up? If I get sick, what will happen to Caleb? Those thoughts made sleep fitful, filled with nightmares of the diner going bankrupt or Owen returning to claim him. But in return, Caleb improved remarkably. He was frequently praised by his teacher. Caleb has a God-given voice, full of emotion. He won first place in a small school performance, singing a folk song that earned endless applause. He began to attract attention in student arts activities, invited to sing at local festivals, and even a small Madison newspaper wrote an article about the emerging young talent. I grew visibly thinner and more tired, clothes hanging loose, dark circles under my eyes. But every time I saw Caleb confidently standing on the school's small stage, I knew all my sacrifices were worthwhile. At one performance, I stood in the audience seats, heart pounding with excitement as he stepped out. The stage lights shone on his face. His voice rose clear and moving, "Somewhere over the rainbow," silencing the entire hall before thunderous applause erupted. Tears rolled down my cheeks. The kid did it. In that moment, I understood I was giving him a future I myself had never had. I grew up in poverty without standout talent, knowing only hard labor. But for Caleb, it was different. That talent could lift him out of the cycle. Time passed quietly, like the chilly autumn winds in Madison sweeping scattered golden leaves along the streets. The boy who once huddled trembling in front of the diner door all those years ago, with eyes full of weariness and hunger, was now 15 years old. Caleb had grown taller, his shoulders broader, his voice deep and warm, and above all, he carried a confident, captivating presence whenever he stood on stage. It was as if that place had been made for him. The spotlights shining down, the echoing applause, and him singing as though telling the story of his own life, every note stirring the soul. I watched him from the small school performances, then gradually at local festivals, and my heart always pounded with nervousness. Will he forget the lyrics? Will the audience not like it? Those worries still haunted me, even though he had made remarkable progress. Our lives still revolved around the diner, but now there were longer trips to Milwaukee or Chicago for auditions, making everything more dramatic, full of surprises. I remember the nights he practiced singing at home, his voice echoing through the thin walls, and I sat listening with a surge of pride mixed with anxiety. The kid will soar higher, but will someone try to pull him down? On a sweltering summer afternoon when Madison was bathed in brilliant golden sunlight, we arrived at a bigger singing competition, the Midwest Regional Young Talent Contest, held in a large auditorium with hundreds of spectators. My heart raced wildly from early morning as I helped him prepare his outfit, a clean shirt I'd bought from a discount store and the polished shoes he'd shined himself. "Dad, I'm so nervous," Caleb whispered on the way there, his hand gripping the practice microphone tightly. I smiled and patted his shoulder. "You've got this. Just sing like you do at home." But inside, anxiety churned. This wasn't a school event anymore. It was a big stage with professional judges from record labels. We sat waiting for his turn, the auditorium air thick with whispers and sound checks. When he stepped onto the stage, I gripped the armrest tightly, silently praying, "Don't let him fail. Don't let all the sacrifices be in vain." He sang Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, his voice clear yet brimming with emotion, as if recounting his years of wandering, the pain and the hope. The audience fell silent, then erupted in thunderous applause when he finished. I stood in the audience seats, heart pounding, waiting for the results. The announcement of the awards dragged on endlessly. Other contestants' names were called, and I thought, just making the top 10 would be good enough. But then the MC's voice boomed, "And the first prize goes to Caleb Frost." When his name was announced among the winners, I froze, tears rolling down my cheeks once more. In that moment, the world seemed to stop. He ran down to hug me, the audience applauding, and I knew that both our lives had turned a new page. He was no longer the homeless boy. He was a true talent. But the nervousness lingered. What now? How will life change? From that award, Caleb began to attract serious attention from industry professionals, no longer just a standout school talent. Local newspapers wrote about him, from the streets to the stage, and my phone rang constantly with offers from managers. My heart raced with every call. Is this a scam or a real opportunity? The first invitations came, small acoustic cafe performances, then community events in Wisconsin. Then the first short-term contract arrived. A small Chicago record label invited him to record his debut single with a fee of $500. I read the contract carefully, my hands trembling. I can't let anyone take advantage of him. We signed and he stepped into a recording studio for the first time, as excited as a child receiving a gift. Doors I had never dared imagine were now opening. Performances at music festivals, radio interviews, making life more dramatic than ever. I drove him to gigs, worrying about long distances and his first fans, but bursting with pride as I watched him shine. Caleb's income was still modest, a few $100s per gig, but steady, enough to ease the financial struggles for the two of us. No more days of scrimping on every meal or dreading piled-up bills. One evening, he quietly handed me his first paycheck and said, his voice trembling yet firm, "I want to give this to you myself. Thank you, Dad, for raising me to this day." I froze, my throat tightening. I hugged him tightly and whispered, "Thank you, son. I'll accept it. Not for the money, but for your heart." With that money, we gradually paid off debts, bought better groceries, and even renovated the diner. Fresh paint on the walls, new tables and chairs. I no longer needed those exhausting night shifts. The grueling late nights cleaning the Italian restaurant became just a memory. I slept better, woke earlier, and the diner ran more smoothly with the shared financial burden. Regular customers noticed, "Thomas, you're looking healthier these days." I smiled, thanks to my son. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that all the silent sacrifices had not been in vain. The sleepless nights, the mounting debts, the skipped meals, they had all turned into Caleb's smile on stage. Even as he stepped into a wider world with flashing cameras, autograph-seeking fans, and a packed schedule, Caleb remained grounded and grateful. He wasn't arrogant. He never forgot his roots. I remember one evening after a big performance in Milwaukee, he came home late but still sat down to talk. "Dad, today I sang in front of 500 people, but I missed our diner." I understood exactly what he was feeling because Caleb had never forgotten the days when we lived in hardship. He still remembered the cramped apartment, the old sofa that served as his bed, the reheated diner soup for dinner, and the constant quiet worry when money ran low. Once he looked at me, his eyes unusually serious, and said he didn't want to forget that time, because it was the reason he was here today. I knew Caleb fully understood that what he had now didn't come solely from his talent. Looking into those serious eyes, I realized he had noticed the nights I came home exhausted, the debts I tried to hide, and the perseverance I never complained about in front of him. Whenever he didn't have late rehearsals or shows, Caleb always tried to come home for dinner no matter how tired he was. He turned down after-show parties, driving back to Madison just to sit at our small table, excitedly telling me about the performances and new experiences. "Today I met a famous singer. He praised my voice. I wanted to tell you first." He always shared with me first, from new contracts to songs he'd written himself. Those evenings were warm, filled with the smell of grilled meat from the kitchen, echoing laughter and me listening, my heart pounding with excitement at his stories. Will he get swept up in showbiz or stay true to himself? But he always remained genuine, asking about the diner, even helping wipe tables when he got home late. Hearing my son talk and laugh so brightly, I realized that between us had formed a true family, not bound by blood but by connection and the choice to stay by each other's side. Those days passed peacefully. like a gentle melody after all the storms we had weathered. Caleb now towered over me by a head, his voice growing ever more mature and his performance schedule denser than ever before. Yet he still kept the habit of coming home as early as possible, sitting at our small dining table in the apartment and chattering about everything, from recording sessions in Chicago to fans asking for autographs at local festivals. I listened to him talk, my heart always warming, but sometimes I couldn't help feeling uneasy about the risks ahead. The world of showbiz is harsh and full of temptations. I feared he might get swept away by all that glamour, so I often reminded him in a slow, steady voice, "Remember to stay grounded, son. Don't let the things around you make you forget who you are." He would just smile and reply softly, "Don't worry, Dad. I'm your son after all." Avery's Diner was now busier thanks to his fame. A few local articles had mentioned the father of the young singer, making revenue stable enough for us to live comfortably without counting every penny. I no longer had to work night shifts. I focused solely on the diner and the evenings with him. Life was beautiful, but I knew that peace is often just the calm before a bigger storm. On one peaceful evening like any other, as Madison sank into a gentle twilight, we were having dinner together. I had cooked his favorite grilled meat, along with fresh chicken salad and crispy toasted bread. A simple but cozy meal. Caleb ate while telling me about his latest recording session. "Dad, today I tried a new beat. It sounds awesome. I'll sing it for you tomorrow, okay?" I smiled and put another piece of meat on his plate. "I'm looking forward to it. But eat slowly, or you'll choke." The house was filled with laughter and the aroma of food, and I thought to myself, this is all I need in life. But then an unexpected knock sounded at the door, frantic and violent, more like pounding than knocking. My heart tightened immediately. A bad premonition surged. I stood up, trying to keep my voice calm. "Let me check. It's probably just the neighbor." But inside, anxiety churned. Who would come at this hour? And that knocking. Too aggressive. I opened the door and I froze as if slapped in the face. Owen Frost stood outside, reeking of alcohol, his face gaunt with deep wrinkles, unkempt beard, and those eyes, oh, those eyes full of calculation, gleaming like a hungry wolf eyeing prey. He was taller than I remembered, but his body now shriveled from years of drinking. His clothes filthy, and the foul stench wafting in made me want to step back. Before I could react, Owen brazenly pushed past me and strode in as if it were his own house. He staggered and plopped down on the sofa, his eyes scanning the room before fixing on Caleb. The boy instinctively shrank back, his face turning pale as old memories of abuse flooded in, making his fear impossible to hide. Caleb backed against the wall, hands gripping the table edge tightly, eyes wide with terror. I could see him trembling like a small animal being hunted. My heart pounded wildly, anxiety rising. Why is he here now? What does he want? Owen smirked, his hoarse laugh echoing heavily in the small room, weighing down the air. He leaned against the wall, eyes locked on Caleb, his voice drawn out with sarcasm. "Look at that! My son has grown so big. I hear you're famous now, huh, Caleb? Making money from all that singing." He spoke without even glancing at me once, his gaze probing, calculating every reaction from the boy. Caleb didn't respond. He just bowed his head low. I saw him bite his lip until it bled, hands clenched tightly to suppress the shaking. I immediately stepped forward, positioning myself between them, trying to stay calm despite the rage boiling inside. "Owen, what do you want? You signed away your parental rights for $200. You have no right to show up here." Owen laughed louder, the sound reverberating challengingly in the cramped space. "Rights? I'm his real father, you idiot. Now that he's successful making money from those singing gigs, he should repay the one who raised him." He took another step forward, his voice growing more brazen. "I fed him, gave him a place to live for years. Now I need money, he has to give it. $500. Hand it over. Quick." Those words cut straight into my chest like a knife. In his eyes, Caleb wasn't a person, but something to extort money from. Rage boiled within me, but seeing Caleb trembling behind me, I knew I couldn't let things escalate further. The boy had already suffered too much trauma. I silently went to the bedroom, opened the drawer, and took out what remained of our meager savings, about $300. I returned, placed the money in Owen's hand, my voice low but firm. "Take it, then get out of here, and never come back." Owen snatched it, counted quickly, his mouth curling in satisfaction. "This'll do." He glanced at me with a sneer. "You know how to play nice. But remember, when I need more, I'll be back." With that, Owen staggered out the door, leaving the apartment suffocating in heavy silence. The door slammed shut. I stood frozen, heart racing, a chilling thought passing through my mind. This is only temporary quiet. He'll return. For sure. Caleb burst into tears, rushing to hug me tightly, his voice choking with fear. "Dad, why did he come? I'm so scared." I held him, gently stroking his back, trying to sound steady. "It's okay, son. I'm here. He's gone." But that night, neither of us could sleep. Old memories quietly resurfaced, like a nightmare that refused to let go. In the days that followed, Owen appeared again in similar states, over and over. The first return was 2 days later. He pounded on the door at midnight, drunk, demanding $200 for gambling debts. I gave it to avoid a fight, but my heart burned with anger. Then the third time, he showed up at the diner in the middle of the day, yelling in front of customers, "Where's my son? He has to give me money." Regulars were startled, and I had to drag him outside, handing over another $100 to get rid of him. He came up with different excuses, sometimes claiming illness needing medicine, sometimes unemployment needing food, as if seeing me as an obvious source of handouts. Each visit made my heart pound with anxiety, fearing Caleb would come home unexpectedly or that the diner would lose customers. Caleb grew worried. He smiled less, and once he asked, "Why won't he leave us alone, Dad?" I didn't know how to answer, just held him tighter. When I realized that giving in only made things worse, Owen came more often, demanding more, I decided to stop. One evening, when he knocked again, demanding $400 as a final amount, I firmly refused. "This time, I'm not giving you any more money, Owen. You should leave and not come back. Otherwise, I'll call the police." My voice was resolute, phone already in hand. He froze, face red with rage. "You dare do that to me? I'm his father." But I didn't yield, closing the door, heart pounding as I waited for his reaction. Owen banged a few times, cursing loudly, then left. But that was just the beginning. Rejected, he began harassing us constantly. Late-night calls, threatening messages. "I'll tell the press everything. That you stole my son." Worse, he showed up outside Caleb's school, now an arts-focused high school, causing a scene. He shouted at the gate, "Caleb, come out! Your dad needs money!" Students panicked, teachers called the police, and officers took him away. Caleb came home crying, "Dad, I'm scared to go to school. I'm afraid of what he'll do to me." Our lives as father and son were completely upended. Caleb lived in constant worry. He practiced singing less, with dark circles under his eyes from sleepless nights. I saw him curling up every evening, old memories returning, the beatings, the fearful nights. The diner grew quieter due to rumors, and I grew anxious every time the doorbell rang. This can't go on, I thought, my heart heavy. I began gathering all the evidence, the parental rights waiver Owen signed for $200, Caleb's detailed accounts of the years of abuse. He recounted every beating, every scar, along with the harassing messages and police reports from the school. I met with a lawyer, hands trembling as I filed for a restraining order at the Madison court. Will the court accept it? Or will Owen deny everything? The anxious wait for the hearing felt like torture. I lost sleep worrying for Caleb. The hearing took place on a drizzly morning, the courtroom air cold and somber. Owen appeared drunk, cursing at my lawyer. But after reviewing the files and testimony, Caleb trembling as he recounted to the judge, voice breaking, the court granted the request. The judge declared, "Mr. Owen Frost is prohibited from approaching Caleb Frost and Thomas Avery within 500 meters. Violation will result in imprisonment." Those words made me exhale in relief, tears streaming down. Owen cursed as he was let out, and we returned home, hugging and crying. From then on, life for Caleb and me gradually stabilized, the constant fear pushed back. No more late-night knocks, no more worry when Caleb went to school. We returned to our old rhythm. The diner grew busy again, Caleb's voice filling the house with song. But I knew this was only the necessary calm before bigger changes waiting ahead. Life has never truly stayed peaceful for too long, especially for a family pieced together from broken fragments like ours. There were nights when I lay awake, restless, imagining what might suddenly strike, an unexpected accident, an unforeseen scandal, or something from the past returning to knock on our door. I always felt this peace was too fragile. And then, that turning point arrived, not loudly, not with warning, but enough to shake everything. One late evening, as Madison had sunk into quiet darkness with gentle winds carrying the scent of decaying autumn leaves, I was busy serving the last customers at the diner. The place was busier than usual that day. Laughter echoed, the aromas of grilled meat and coffee filled the air, keeping me occupied with serving and billing. I wiped the sweat from my forehead, thinking to myself, "Good day today. Enough to fix the porch roof." Suddenly the door opened, and an elegant woman stepped in, her calm demeanor standing out amid the lively atmosphere. She wore a long silk coat, her hair neatly tied up, silver jewelry glinting under the yellowish lights, looking as if she had stepped out of a high-end downtown office rather than into my modest diner. My heart fluttered strangely, not because of her appearance, but because of a vague sense of familiarity, as if I'd seen her somewhere before. She chose a secluded corner table, sat down with graceful movements, and ordered like any other customer, a bowl of chicken soup and black coffee. I served her quickly, but while eating, she sipped slowly and discreetly observed me. Her gaze followed my every move, wiping tables, smiling at regulars, making me feel uneasy and puzzled. Who is she? Why is she looking at me like that? I wondered silently, my heart beating a little faster, anxious as if being watched. I tried to avoid her, focusing on work, but every glance over caught those eyes, not hostile, but full of meaning. When the diner had emptied with only a few stragglers left, she stood to pay, handing over the money politely. But then unexpectedly she asked, "Mr. Avery, may I speak with you privately for a moment? Just a few minutes." Those words surprised me. My heart tightened. How did she know my name? I hesitated but nodded politely, leading her to a quiet corner of the diner, thinking, maybe she's a fan of Caleb's or a reporter. We sat down and the air suddenly grew tense, anxiety surging within me. Her next confession left me stunned, as if struck by lightning out of a clear sky. She looked straight into my eyes, her voice trembling but resolute. "I am Claire Frost. I am Caleb's biological mother, the one who abandoned her son many years ago." That name, Claire Frost, exploded in my mind like a thunderclap. I sat speechless, memories of what Caleb had told me flooding back. The mother who left, abandoning him to an alcoholic Owen, to beatings and fear. "Why are you here?" I stammered, gripping the table edge tightly to suppress the rising anger. Claire explained that after leaving, life had pushed her into work, starting as a small office clerk in Chicago, then gradually advancing through perseverance and luck. Now she was a successful manager at a financial firm. But throughout those years, the guilt over the child she left behind never faded. I found Caleb through news articles about the boy and his singing talent. And when I learned you had adopted him, I came here carrying shame and regret, hoping you would give me a chance to say everything. Her words were sincere, her eyes reddening, but my heart boiled. Anger surged within me like crashing waves. I could no longer hold back. I confronted her, each word bursting from the painful memories I had tried to bury deep. "Do you know what the boy went through?" I said, my voice trembling uncontrollably. "He wandered the streets for weeks, so hungry he only dared stand in front of the diner hoping someone would give him scraps. There were nights he slept under bridges, curled up from cold and fear. And whenever he went home, what waited wasn't safety, it was Owen's beatings." I took a deep breath, but my voice still broke. "You left, abandoning a child to a violent alcoholic. Do you know he had to run away because he couldn't take it anymore?" I looked directly at Claire, Now, when he's finally standing steady, when his life is starting to settle, you return. For what? When he's already happy enough? Claire bowed her head, her shoulders shaking. Tears silently fell onto the table. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice hoarse from choking back sobs. I know I was wrong. I don't deny it. She looked up at me, eyes red. Back then, I was also a victim of Owen. I was beaten every day. I feared that if I stayed, I wouldn't survive. I thought, if I left, at least one of us would escape. Her voice cracked. But I regret it. I regret it every day. There's no night I don't think of my son. I shook my head, trying not to sound too harsh. Whatever your reasons, returning now can't be just about what you want. I slowed down, each word heavy. Caleb has built a new life. It took him so much to trust people again. You can't suddenly appear and expect him to open his heart as if nothing happened. That would only hurt him more. The thought of having to tell Caleb all this made my heart pound. I looked at Claire, my voice lowered but firm. I need to protect the boy first. The air between us was suffocatingly heavy. Finally, I stood up, maintaining final politeness, but no concession. That's enough for today. I need time to think. You should go. Claire silently stood, wiping her tears. She looked at me as if wanting to say more, but only nodded slightly. Without excuses or pleas, she turned and left the diner, leaving behind a heavy silence that I knew would haunt me for a long time. In the days that followed, Claire occasionally appeared at the diner, quietly ordering a coffee, a slice of pie, then sitting in a corner and waiting without making noise or pressure. She didn't approach me, just sat there observing from afar as if patiently awaiting an opportunity. My heart raced every time she entered. What will she say today? Or just sit like that? To avoid affecting customers, I couldn't chase her away. I remained distant and evasive, serving quickly, then turning away. Regulars noticed. That woman comes often, huh? Looks familiar. I forced a smile, saying nothing. Gradually, Claire brought small gifts for Caleb, a warm sweater, a book about music, a box of candy, and left them with me cautiously and patiently without any demands. Please pass these to Caleb if you think it's appropriate, she said softly. I accepted, but my heart was conflicted, anxiously wondering, is she truly sincere, or just trying to atone? Seeing that sincerity in her small gestures, I grew less harsh. I took the gifts for Caleb, but kept my distance, not initiating conversation, only nodding thanks. I stored those gifts carefully, not yet giving them to him, fearing it would upset him. After many sleepless nights under dim light, I realized Claire had also been a victim of her alcoholic husband, and perhaps leaving was the only choice she thought she had to survive. My heart softened, anxious about the decision ahead. One time after closing, I took the initiative to message Claire, a short text using the number she'd left on a receipt. We met at a nearby cafe, and I stated clearly, I agree to let you meet him, but whether Caleb accepts you will be entirely his decision. I won't force it. Claire nodded, her eyes lighting with hope. Thank you for giving me a chance to see the boy. I'll be patient. The first meeting among the three of us was arranged at the diner after closing, in a quiet space where no one had to put on a front. Beforehand, I chose to tell Caleb first. My heart pounded as I looked at him, trying to stay calm. Son, I need to tell you something. Your biological mother has returned. She wants to meet you. Caleb froze. His face visibly paled, eyes wide with panic. In just a second, he shook his head repeatedly, voice bursting with fear. I don't want her. She abandoned me. With that, Caleb turned and ran to the back room, slamming the door. I stood silently, hearing muffled sobs from the other side. Claire stood beside me, tears streaming quietly. But she didn't step forward, didn't knock, didn't say another word. In the following days, Claire persisted patiently. She came to the diner, ordered something simple, sometimes leaving a small gift on the table before sitting and waiting. She always kept her distance, never pushing or causing a scene. Sometimes I heard her whisper softly as if to herself, just one look from him would be enough. I stayed by his side, gradually encouraging Caleb to face his fear. I spoke slowly. I know you resent her, but she suffered a lot too. If you're not ready, I won't force you, but at least try listening to what she has to say. Subsequent meetings unfolded in tense, anxious atmospheres. At first, Caleb avoided her, not looking at Claire, just sitting silently in a corner. Then gradually he began glancing at her, asking very short, soft questions. Once Caleb clenched his fists, voice trembling as he asked, "Why did you abandon me when I needed you most?" That question made Claire break down in tears. She told everything without evasion or excuses, just apologizing and admitting her mistakes. Caleb listened, eyes red, saying nothing more but no longer running away as before. I watched them, understanding the wounds couldn't heal immediately. But at least the door was no longer tightly shut. Over time, with that patience, Caleb gradually opened up, accepting Claire's presence while still keeping some distance. He allowed her to join dinner, to talk about music, but wasn't ready to call her mom. I watched from afar, anxiously awaiting that moment. And then on a rainy evening, with drops pattering against the window as Claire was slowly telling Caleb about his early childhood, the unexpected happened. Caleb suddenly stepped forward and hugged her. Claire froze for a moment, then trembled as she wrapped her arms around him, tears silently flowing. I stood watching from a distance, suddenly understanding that our family wasn't bound by blood, but by choice, patience, and immense courage to stay. Still, a nameless anxiety lingered within me. Would Claire truly stay, or was life preparing another twist? But at least in that moment, amid the steady rain, I saw hope, fragile but real. From then on, Claire became a regular presence in Caleb's and my life. Not intrusive or demanding, just quietly visiting her son. She often stopped by on weekends or late afternoons, bringing a basket of fresh fruit from the local market or small items like music books she thought Caleb would enjoy. Claire never suddenly demanded maternal rights. She didn't ask Caleb to come live with her or immediately call her mom. Instead of trying to force her way in or demand anything, Claire simply remained patiently present, becoming a natural part of our father and son life, sitting at the kitchen table, helping with cleanup, or simply listening to Caleb talk about his recent performances. The first time she stayed for dinner, the atmosphere was still somewhat tense, but Claire skillfully prepared a simple macaroni and cheese, the exact dish Caleb had once mentioned she used to make for him when he was little. "You used to love this," she said softly. Caleb didn't reply, still keeping his distance, but he nodded slightly and took another spoonful. I watched from afar, my heart pounding with anxiety, fearing that one wrong word would shatter everything. But gradually, through meals like that, the meetings became more familiar. Claire never pushed, and it was precisely that patience that allowed Caleb to begin opening up. Little by little, our small home grew warmer than ever before. Meals now echoed with laughter, Claire sharing funny work stories from Chicago, Caleb excitedly talking about a new song he was composing, and me sitting there listening, feeling as though a missing piece had finally been filled. Those moments made me realize the positive change in my son. He smiled more, slept better, and even began naturally calling Claire Mom in private conversations. I observed it all in silence, my heart swelling with joy mixed with nervousness, for I knew this balance was fragile and any incident could shatter it. Conversations between Claire and me flowed more naturally than I had imagined. At first, we only talked about Caleb. I told her about his difficult journey to adulthood, from the days wandering the streets to the moment he first stood on stage, voice trembling yet full of determination. He endured so much pain, but now he's so strong, I said, my voice lowering as I recalled the nights he cried from nightmares about Owen. Claire listened, eyes reddening, then shared about her years building a career alone, from fleeing Owen with just one small suitcase to sleepless nights working in the office to escape the guilt over the child she left behind. "I thought leaving was the way to protect him, but I was wrong," she confessed, voice trembling. Two wounded people found empathy in each other. No promises needed, no rush. just understanding born from shared experiences. We talked about fear, about sacrifice, and gradually those conversations grew longer, from the diner to walks in the nearby park. My heart beat faster each time I saw her, anxious about the strange new feelings blossoming. Not love at first sight, but something deeper, built from our shared broken pieces. The affection grew slowly but steadily, founded on sincerity and respect for each other's past. Claire never tried to hide her mistakes, and I didn't conceal the hardships I'd faced raising Caleb. We began spending time alone, a late afternoon coffee or a drive along Lake Mendota where we shared dreams for the future. "I want to help Caleb soar higher, but I also want to be with you," she said once, squeezing my hand tightly. I felt nervous, heart pounding, for I had never imagined another chance at love after years of loneliness. But then, when Caleb expressed his acceptance and blessing, he pulled us together, smiling brightly. "Dad, Mom, I think you two are perfect together. I give you my blessing." We decided to be together, choosing to leave the old pains behind. That decision kept me anxious all night, thinking about the future. Can we make it? Or will the past come back to haunt us? The wedding was simple and warm, held in a small church on the outskirts of Madison on a gentle spring morning with soft sunlight. We invited only a few close friends, regular diner customers, and of course Caleb, who served as best man with a radiant smile. Claire wore a simple white dress, hair flowing loosely, looking so beautiful it took my breath away. The chapel featured only wildflowers picked from the park and gentle piano music, but the atmosphere overflowed with the peace I once thought I'd never have again. As we exchanged vows, hands clasped tightly, I looked at Claire and thought, finally I have a complete family. Caleb stood beside us, clapping first when we kissed, and everyone laughed joyfully. The reception followed at my diner. We cooked ourselves, guests raised glasses and toasts, and for the first time in years I felt life truly smiling at me. But amid the joyful atmosphere, with soft music and echoing laughter, Leonard and Ruth, my biological parents, suddenly appeared, bringing unmistakable tension. I spotted them from afar, standing at the diner door with scowling faces, and my heart tightened immediately. Why are they here? I thought, anxiety surging like waves. They walked in without greeting anyone, heading straight to Claire and me. Caleb startled, gripping Claire's hand tightly while Claire turned to me with worried eyes. My father, Leonard, spoke first. His voice was harsh, making no effort to hide his demands. "Thomas, we heard you're getting married. Now that you're settled, it's time to take care of your family again. Support your parents. Fulfill your filial duty like before. We're old. We need your help." My mother, Ruth, immediately chimed in, voice full of reproach and resentment. "You raised an outsider, now you're marrying and you've completely forgotten your real parents? We sacrificed our whole lives for you, now it's time you repay us." Those words sliced through the warm air like a knife, silencing the entire room. Guests looked at each other awkwardly, no one daring to speak. My heart raced wildly, anger rising in my throat, but I tried to keep my voice calm. "Mom, Dad, I made it very clear long ago. That relationship ended the day you turned your backs on me, disowning me because I chose to adopt Caleb. From that moment, I've had to fend for myself." I looked straight at them, continuing without flinching. "Now I have my own family. I have to provide for my wife and Caleb. I can't, and won't, go back to supporting you like before." Shame mixed with anger sparked an explosion. My father slammed his hand on the table, shouting, "You ungrateful brat, raising strangers, marrying, and acting like you have no blood ties left." My mother burst into tears, voice choking. "Son, we're family. How can you treat your parents this way?" The wedding atmosphere instantly grew heavy. Guests looked down, embarrassed. Claire squeezed my hand in silent comfort and support. Caleb stood beside me, face pale with tension, but he stepped forward courageously and said, "Grandpa, Grandma, Dad did the right thing. Now we are the real family." Seeing they couldn't sway me, my parents left angrily, carrying bitterness and an unbridgeable gap. They turned away, the door slamming shut, leaving heavy silence. I stood there, heart pounding, anxiously thinking, Will everything fall apart? But then Claire hugged me. Caleb patted my shoulder. Dad, let's continue. Their quiet trust and support were enough to strengthen my resolve. The reception went on, though the mood was slightly strained. We smiled, raised glasses, and I knew that true family consists of those who choose to stay together no matter the storms. After the wedding, we decided to move into a larger, more spacious house on the outskirts of Madison, with a small garden and all the comforts the three of us had once dreamed of. The old apartment was too cramped for a family of three, so Claire, with her stable income from work, contributed to buying a charming 2-story home, complete with a private room for Caleb featuring a singing practice corner, a spacious living room for us to gather, and a large kitchen where Claire could indulge in cooking. We cleaned and decorated together. Caleb painted his room walls his favorite shade of blue. Claire hung newly taken family photos, and I installed bookshelves for the music books he collected. Those first days in the new house were truly warm and peaceful, like a dream we had longed for but never dared believe possible. Mornings began with Claire making coffee, Caleb singing loudly over breakfast, and me preparing to open the diner with a smile on my face. Evenings, we sat on the porch stargazing and sharing stories. Claire recounting old business trips, Caleb excitedly talking about his upcoming album release, and me reminiscing about the early days after adopting him. Life was simple yet complete, making me anxiously wonder, can things stay this good forever? The peaceful days drifted by slowly like a calm river after turbulent rapids. Avery's diner remained where I spent most of my time, but now Claire helped manage the books, making everything easier. Caleb, now 16, was busy with small Midwest tours, but he always called every evening, voice full of excitement. Mom, Dad, today I sang in front of 1,000 people. We beamed with pride, sending gifts by mail, Claire warm clothes, me homemade baked goods. Owen seemed to have vanished after the court's restraining order, and my biological parents remained silent, no longer in contact. I began to believe the past was truly closed. But then, on a bitterly cold winter afternoon, as snow began to fall lightly outside the diner window, everything changed. I was busy serving customers, the aroma of hot coffee filling the air, when my phone rang insistently. I glanced at the screen. It was Claire, and my heart tightened immediately. She rarely called while I was working unless it was urgent. I answered, voice slightly trembling. Claire, what's wrong? Her voice came panicked and broken over the line. Thomas Owen showed up at our house. He's drunk, pounding on the door, demanding to get in. Caleb and I are hiding in the room. Come home quick. Her words struck me like lightning, freezing the blood in my veins. Owen, the man we thought was gone, had returned, and this time he targeted our home. Rage and fear surged as I threw off my apron, shouting to the staff, "Watch the diner for me, emergency!" before rushing to the car and speeding home recklessly. The Madison streets were slippery with snow, but I didn't care, hands gripping the wheel tightly, heart pounding like a drum. Dread rose. What does he want? How dare he violate the restraining order? Are Claire and Caleb safe? Images of a drunken Owen with his calculating eyes flooded back, making me shake. I called the police en route, voice stuttering. There's an intruder at my house. He might be armed. But the distance from the diner to the new house was farther, and every second felt like an hour. Snow fell thicker, streetlights casting yellowish glows on the wet roads, and I prayed silently. Please don't let me be too late. When I arrived, the front door was flung open, cold wind rushing in, carrying the stench of alcohol and sounds of crashing from inside, glasses shattering, furniture being shoved. My heart constricted as if squeezed. Cold sweat broke out despite the freezing air. I burst into the house, shouting for my wife and son. The scene before me froze my blood. Owen stood in the middle of the living room, utterly intoxicated, reeking of liquor, holding a gleaming kitchen knife under the lights, eyes bloodshot with madness, completely out of control. He staggered, clothes filthy, beard unkempt, growling like a cornered beast. Claire and Caleb huddled against the wall, faces pale with terror. Claire holding Caleb protectively while he trembled, old memories resurfacing, rendering him speechless. Claire screamed upon seeing me, voice mixing hope and horror. Owen whipped around, bloodshot eyes fixing on me. He burst into loud laughter, the hoarse sound echoing through what had been our peaceful home, now distorted and terrifying. His voice dragged out, full of sarcasm and possessiveness. "Finally home, Thomas. Look at you now. Not only did you steal my son, you stole my wife too. I never thought you'd be this good." He glanced at Claire and Caleb, eyes clinging to them as if afraid of losing them, voice lowering but heavy with threat. "But listen clearly. Even if you build this nice little family, it doesn't change one thing. Claire is still my wife and Caleb is still my son. They're mine and they have to come back to me. Got it?" He waved the knife wildly in the air as if violence alone could erase the court's rulings. My heart pounded furiously, breath catching, but I stepped forward, shielding mother and son, trying to keep my voice steady despite trembling limbs. "Owen, enough. Put the knife down and leave my house now. You have no right to be here saying these things." I stared him down, continuing slowly but firmly. "I've called the police. You're violating the restraining order. If you keep up this stupidity, you'll rot in prison." Behind me, Claire leaned close, voice shaking with fear yet trying to stay calm. "Thomas, please don't get closer. He's not in control." Caleb sobbed, clinging to his mother's hand, voice breaking in panic. Rejected, Owen roared like a trapped animal. He pointed the knife directly at me, unleashing all the pent-up rage and resentment. "You stole my family. You walked into my life, took my wife, took my son, and now you stand there ordering me around?" He laughed maniacally, voice venomous. "You think you're a hero? You think standing in front of me ends it?" His eyes darkened, voice dropping chillingly. "I swear I won't let you live in peace. If I can't have what's mine, no one will." The living room air grew thick and suffocating. The overwhelming alcohol stench made my head spin, but I stayed calm, looking him in the eye and speaking slowly, each word firm. "Owen, you signed away your parental rights yourself. $200. You took the money and walked away without hesitation." I drew a deep breath, summoning remaining resolve. "From that moment, you have no rights over Claire or Caleb. Not today, not ever, and certainly not through violence." I pointed toward the door, voice quiet but decisive. "Leave now. Before you cross a line even you can't come back from." But in Owen's eyes then there was no room for reason, only alcohol, hatred, and madness. He roared and charged straight at me in uncontrolled fury, the knife swinging amid Claire's piercing scream and Caleb's desperate cries of my name. I felt the sharp pain as the blade sliced into my chest, blood beginning to soak my white shirt. I collapsed onto the cold floor, strength draining rapidly, but in that moment, I managed a smile toward my wife and son, knowing I had arrived in time to protect them. Claire and Caleb were safe. That was all that mattered. Claire screamed and rushed to my side. I felt her trembling hands pressing the wound, tears falling endlessly onto my face. In my ears were Caleb's wrenching sobs, calling my name in panic, each one pulling me back to reality. Owen seemed to realize he'd done something irreparable. He cursed loudly, staggered around, then fled out the door, vanishing into the thick white snow. My consciousness began to fade, everything blurring as if drawn into dense fog. In the last moments I could hold on, I heard Owen's curses growing distant, mingling with Claire's and Caleb's desperate cries. Then from far away came the sound of ambulance sirens, slow but clear, like a late salvation I clung to and refused to release. I slowly opened my eyes, the first sensation being the heaviness of my body, as if someone were pressing down hard on my chest. The stark white light of the hospital room assaulted my vision, forcing me to blink repeatedly to adjust. The strong smell of antiseptic filled the air, mingled with the steady beeping of the heart monitor beside me. I tried to shift, wanting to sit up and figure out where I was, but a sharp pain shot through my left chest, making me groan softly as my hand instinctively reached for the wound. Am I alive or dead? I thought silently, my heart racing with anxiety as memories of Owen's knife and the blood spreading across the floor flooded back like a nightmare. The room was quiet, broken only by soft breathing from someone beside the bed. I turned my head and saw Claire, my wife, asleep with her head resting on the edge of the mattress, her face exhausted with dark circles under her eyes, hair disheveled from days without proper rest. She startled awake at my groan, froze for a few seconds as if unable to believe her eyes, then burst into joyful tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thomas, you're awake. You're finally awake." She leaned in to hug me gently, careful of the wound, her voice trembling. "I'm calling the doctor right now." Claire hurriedly pressed the nurse call button, then returned to grasp my hand tightly, tears still falling. "You scared me to death, Thomas. I thought I'd lost you." The doctor and nurses quickly arrived for a thorough check, measuring my heart rate, examining the wound, asking about pain levels and my awareness. I lay still, answering each question weakly, my heart still pounding as I tried to piece together what had happened. After the examination, the doctor, a middle-aged man with a reassuring voice, reported, "Mr. Avery, you've passed the critical stage. The knife wound was deep, but fortunately missed your heart and major arteries. You were in a coma for 5 days due to severe blood loss and shock, but you're stable now. With rest, proper medication, and gradual recovery, you'll be fully healthy in a few weeks." His words brought relief, but also shock. 5 days? I'd been here 5 days? Claire nodded in confirmation as the doctor left, the room falling quiet again. She held my hand tighter, voice emotional. "You were unconscious for 5 whole days, Thomas. Caleb and I took turns staying by your side, not daring to leave for a moment. As for Owen, he was arrested at his own place shortly after. The police found him drunk with the knife still covered in your blood. He couldn't escape." Her words filled me with surging anxiety. "He was caught? The threat was over?" I whispered. "Are you and Caleb okay?" She wiped her tears and smiled. "We're fine, thanks to you. You shielded us." The following days in the hospital were a slow but deeply warm recovery period. Claire stayed constantly by my side, tending to every meal. She brought homemade chicken soup from home, feeding me spoonful by spoonful gently, sharing light stories to distract from the pain. "You need to eat more to get strong soon. I still want to walk with you around Lake Mendota," she said softly, though worry lingered in her voice. I looked at her, my heart overflowing with gratitude and love. The woman who once left out of fear had become my strongest pillar. Each night under the dim hospital lights, she sat by the bed holding my hand as she dozed, and I lay awake, anxiously pondering the future. Will I fully recover? Or will this wound leave lasting effects? But her presence eased much of the fear, making me stronger. Caleb was no less attentive. After every performance or rehearsal, he visited the hospital no matter how tired. He entered the room with a bright smile, bringing fresh flowers or a new playlist, sitting by the bed sharing little stories just as he did when he was younger. "Dad, today I sang at a local festival. Everyone clapped so hard. But I missed you, so I sang Hallelujah, the one you love." He described fans, new contracts, and jokes with friends at art school in excited detail, as if trying to pull me from the pain. I listened, smiling weakly, heart aching as I saw him hiding his fear. He still trembled, recounting the night Owen attacked. "I was so scared, Dad, but I knew you'd wake up. I couldn't lose you again." Those moments were rich with emotion, making me anxiously reflect on his journey, from the homeless boy to the talented young man, now part of a complete family. Caleb even sang gentle songs for me, his clear voice echoing in the room, drawing nurses to peek in. "I'm singing so you'll get better soon," he said, and I nodded, tears rolling down from pride. My health improved day by day. The initial sharp pain subsided. I began sitting up, walking with Claire's support, then taking my first independent steps in the hospital hallway. At each checkup, the doctor praised, "You're recovering quickly, thanks to your positive spirit and family support." I was discharged after 2 weeks in the arms of my family, Claire pushing the wheelchair, Caleb carrying the bags, and we returned home in joy mixed with nervousness. The new house felt warmer than ever, with the aroma of Claire's cooking waiting and Caleb hanging a "Welcome Home, Dad" sign. I sat on the porch, breathing fresh air, thinking, I survived, but life is so fragile. The case concluded swiftly afterward. Owen was tried in Madison court, with clear evidence, the bloodstained knife, our testimonies, and his history of violating the restraining order. The court sentenced him to 7 years in prison for assault with a deadly weapon and unlawful entry, plus a permanent restraining order against our family. The verdict ended the threat completely, bringing relief, but also anxious thoughts. Will he regret it, or harbor hatred in prison? Returning to Avery's Diner, I was surprised to learn many customers had heard my story through local news, an article titled "The Man Who Stood Firm When His Family Was in Danger." And they came more often, not just to eat, but to check on me and offer well wishes. The diner grew busy again, revenue surged, and we even extended hours. Regulars hugged me. "Thomas, are you okay? We were so worried." I smiled, serving them with renewed joy, but kept old habits, not expanding too much, not chasing money, prioritizing family dinners above all. Each evening we gathered around the table, Claire cooking delicious meals, Caleb sharing performance stories, and me listening, heart full of gratitude. Though life grew more comfortable, Caleb signing major contracts, the diner thriving, I maintained simplicity. One peaceful afternoon, with gentle golden sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, I sat on the porch watching Claire cook with a radiant smile and listening to Caleb humming a familiar melody from his room, "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," the song from his first big performance. That moment made me recall the entire journey, from Caleb huddling outside the diner on a freezing night, through financial struggles, disownment by my biological parents, Caleb's talent blossoming, Claire's return, our simple wedding, and the final tragedy with Owen. It all felt like a long film, full of tension and drama. Sleepless nights worrying about money, confrontations with Owen, the stabbing pain. In the end, I understood that family isn't where you're born, but where you choose to stay and protect to the end. I also realized that kindness sometimes demands great sacrifice. Money, health, even life itself. But those choices lead to a life truly worth living. And if faced with choosing between false peace and what's right, choose what's right. For true peace comes only when we don't turn our backs on our conscience. I hugged Claire from behind, voice low. After everything that's happened, I just want to say one thing. Thank you for believing this family is worth staying and fighting for. Claire paused silently for a moment, then turned to grasp my hand tightly. I stayed not for the past, but for this present. For our son, and for what you've done for our family. Caleb ran down, hugging us both, and in that instant we all laughed. Not the laughter of escape from danger, but the laughter of people who know they've found their true place. Life goes on, no longer weighed by fear, but lifted by hope. From a lonely man in a small diner, I now have a family, not by blood, but by choice. And to me, that is the most complete ending to the long journey we've shared.